Warhammer models are expensive. And when we have our money, we want to make sure that we spend it in a way that's going to best benefit us when we push out our hard-earned cash for our little plastic spacemen. So the question becomes, what do we spend it on? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Glacial Geek video. I am Phil, the Glacial Geek, and today I want to talk about something that I think comes through the mind of every single player, unless you are exorbitantly wealthy, in which case perhaps this is not the discussion you have with yourself because there's no need to. But as anyone else out there who has a limited budget that you work with and try to benefit yourself the most, we've always spent time staring at that wall of models in the gaming store or the scrolling through on our web store. Whatever it is, you see just the plethora of choices that you have for the various different armies. And even once you've narrowed it down to what army you want to do, there's a ton of choices within that army of models that you can buy. And how many of them do you buy? And which kind of versions do you buy? Do I buy vehicles? Do I buy infantry? Do I need HQs? Do I need different types of HQs? What do I spend my money on? And what is the best use of my hobby budget so that I will be happiest when I have my collection? Now, the pure answer to this is whichever models you're going to use. And I know that sounds flippant, I know that sounds dismissive, but it's the truth. And to get there, it requires a lot of self-reflection on what it is that you want out of this army that you are collecting, what it is that you want to do with it, and what you want from it. So if you're going into it just painting cool models to look cool on your shelf, and you're not ever really going to play, you just like to collect, build, and paint, then the answer to that question is the model that you will use is the one that looks coolest to you. If it's a model that everyone's been talking about and it was the new hotness and it just came up and you bought it because that's just what everyone was talking about, if you don't find it cool, you're never going to bust it out. You're never going to take it off the shelf to build and paint because that takes a lot of effort to do so. And suddenly you're going to have a kit that sits on your shelf, not doing anything for you, just making you feel upset at the money that you spent on that kit, just staring at you. And it might even keep you from buying a kit that you actually would get yourself involved with, that would have you building and painting during your hobby time, because you think that, well, if I already have this on the shelf, I don't need to buy any others. So going into it, understanding what you want from it is important. Don't do it because someone else tells you to. Don't do it because someone else says this is the coolest model that you could ever want. If you don't think so, it's not going to get done. And at that point, it's not doing you any good to have it. Now, if you are a player and that's what you do primarily is go out and play the game, then at that point, you have to ask yourself some further questions. So already you know you want to play with the game. So if it's not going to be playable, then odds are it's not great for you. So if you were looking to put together an army and you want to have it that you can take it out with you every week to your game, to the game store for your weekly game of 40K, then going out and buying a Titan is not the way to go, because odds are you're going to get maybe one game in, maybe a year that you're going to be able to bring out like a Warlord Titan for, maybe. And at that point, you spend a ton of money on a model, put in a lot of effort to build and paint it, that you're not going to get to use it. And if you are in it for the game, then that's not serving a purpose for you that it would for someone who would look cool on the shelf for. So you now know you want to play with it. Now you have to ask yourself, what do you find enjoyable during the game? Do you like moving big trucks up the board? Do you like having tanks that flow and just shoot the enemy off the board as they rumble across the terrain? Then probably go with a vehicle. I know that sounds like it's an easy thought, but a lot of times you see people talk about, oh, min squad units are the way, vehicles in this meta don't work. But if that's what you want to play and that's what you're going to play, then vehicles will work for you, because otherwise you're going to grow bored and not want to run the army that you've collected, because it's not the way that you like to play the game. It's not the way that you like to see the game. If you're only in it for the competitive aspect, then choosing which model to buy becomes a lot easier, because you can find the new hotness, you can find the one that's got the rules that work well, and you can just buy a bunch of those models and run with them. And that's completely fine if that's what you're looking to do. But if that's not the kind of player you are, if you are more of a casual player, if you are someone who just plays with their friends on the weekends, if you're someone that goes to tournaments, not necessarily looking for top place, but looking to have fun and enjoy just playing 3 games on a weekend with your with a bunch of friends in the game store, then at that point you have to start asking yourself, what kind of list are you going to build? Say you're an orc player, and say you just like playing with boys. You just like the green tide. You like to have a whole bunch of infantry models just marching across the board, getting shot up as they go, but still having enough once they get there to a big old smashing punch to their enemies as they reach them on the other side of the table. Then at that point, spending a whole bunch of money on like a Gargant or a bunch of money on a Stampa isn't going to do you any good, because you're not going to want to play with just the one model in the middle of the table marching across the board shooting things, because that's not for you. That's not your game style. That's not the way you like to play. And if that's not the way you like to play, it doesn't matter how good they are. It doesn't matter how much people like, although I guess saying a Stampa is good is a bit excessive, but at the same time, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks. It doesn't matter what anyone says. If you are not happy playing that army, then it is not going to do you any good to have these models. You have to understand what it is that you enjoy and lean into it. So if you like bodies on the table, then buy infantry kits. If you like vehicles on the table, pick infantry kits. If you like cool characters because you come up with canon in your mind of like their exploits that they perform out on the table, you like to have those single combats between big beefy characters that just get to wail into each other, then spend your money on some HQs and give yourself some options with that so you can start telling the story that you want to. But at the end of the day, you need to buy the kits that are going to get used, that are going to be useful for you, and they're not just going to end up on a shelf collecting dust because you just can't be bothered to deal with them. So buy the cool kit that looks awesome for you because you're going to want to use it. Buy the cool vehicle kit that you're going to put into a list even though everyone says vehicles aren't the meta. Doesn't matter what anyone else says. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. At the end of the day, you have to be self-reflective of what it is that you want. And I know that's not the super answer. It's like, buy this kit. If that's what you're looking for, I'm unfortunately not going to be able to give that to you. And honestly, nobody's going to be able to give that to you. It requires you to think. It requires you to understand what it is that's going on with it. So if you are just starting up an army and you don't have any idea what you want from that army, start to reflect on what was drawn to that army. Were you drawn to orcs because you saw just the tide of green boys just marching across the table? Then lead into infantry. Did you get into Astra Militarum because you loved the tanks and the thought of like tank columns just moving up the table, shooting their enemies as they go, drew you into it? Then buy vehicles. But be honest with yourself and be responsive to what it is that you responded to. So if you saw an army that you wanted to get because of the aesthetics and you thought they looked cool, then what about them looked cool? Was it their big stomping robots? Was it their infantry? Was it a combination of the two? And then once you know that, that's what you need to go. Nobody on the internet, nobody out in the game store is going to be able to tell you what kit to buy, because only you know what it is that you want. And only you know what it is that you're going to use. And only you know what you want out of this. So at the end of the day, you need to be self-reflective, understand what you want out of the game, and understand what it is that you want out of this hobby so that you can know what to get with it. Because they're expensive. And going out and buying kits just because someone said so is never going to make you happy unless you are cognizant of why it is that you're buying it. People can make recommendations if you have thoughts. If you're like, I really like vehicles, I'm thinking Astra Militarum, but I don't know which ones to do. Then you can start to ask for opinions. Do you like big tanks? Maybe get yourself a Baneblade. You know? Do you like a whole bunch of smaller tanks? Do you like it when the infantry are in the tanks? Maybe you go with a Chimera, or maybe you go with a Lehman Russ. Do you like having artillery that gets to sit back? Maybe a Basilisk, you know? Maybe a Wyvern. Then you can start talking about it. And if you have an army that you've already been developing and you realize that there's just something missing from the force that you've got there, then you can start asking for opinions on ideas. If you go, I just can't handle like mass infantry. Like every time I go up there with my tanks for my Astra Militarum, I run into these just like mass infantry forces that I just can't mow down fast enough before they get involved. And it's like, okay, well then you can start to get some ideas. You can go, well, the Wyvern has a whole bunch of different shots, like a lot of shots that can start pumping down the board early on to start winnowing out the enemy before they get to you. And then you can start asking for those things. But if you just sit back and go, I want to start this army, what do I buy? then the only thing that someone's actually legitimately going to be able to tell you is 2 HQs and 3 troop choices so that you have the basis for a battalion. And at that point, that's the bare minimum that you're going to have for anything that you have going forward. But even then, that doesn't work if you just want tanks, because you're probably going to just go with like a Vanguard detachment and just have a bunch of, oh no, not Vanguard. Which was the one? No, yeah, Vanguard detachment. Yeah, no. Which one's the heavy ones? Anyway, whatever it is you're going to have, you're going to run into a detachment and you're not going to have a bunch of troops. And then you're going to want to buy the ones that are going to work for you there and find an HQ that works for that. So be honest with yourself what drew you to the army, be honest with yourself what drew you to the game, and be honest with yourself of what you need in an army that you've already developed. And at that point, you can start to narrow down what you want. But there's no amount of hotness, new model syndrome, anything like that that's going to make you happy with a model. Because if you don't like the way it looks, it doesn't matter how good the rules are, odds are you're probably not going to play it. And no matter how cool the model is, if you don't like playing it, then it's just going to sit there on the shelf. So you need to find that middle ground of what it is that that's going to initiate your desire to build it, paint it, and put it out on the table and bring it week after week. You know, I have plenty of units that are sitting on my shelf that are just gathering dust because I just don't want to play them, because I don't like how they play. You know, some of them I'm disappointed in because I'm like, I wish I wanted to play them because they're cool looking. Other ones I'm like, I don't care about these ones. I just got them because I thought I needed them and then I didn't. And that's fair. That's going to happen to literally everyone. There's going to be models in your collection that just don't get used. But if you are honest with yourself as to what you're looking for, you're going to be happier with your final purchase. So that's my advice. How do you choose what to buy? You find out what it is that you need personally, and then go with that. So be honest with yourself, be self-reflective. And I know that that's the answer that comes from most of my videos is be self-reflective. Be understanding of who you are, be understanding of what you want, and be understanding of what you need. And you will find happiness in whatever you purchase. And you will find happiness in most areas of life if you are self-reflective and understanding of what it is that you need and want from life or the game. And you will find the way forward if you do that. If you look to other people for the answer, odds are you're never going to find the answer that's going to make you happy, and you're never going to find the kit that makes you happy. But if you are self-reflective and get to have an understanding of what it is you want, you can ask for opinions past there. Like, I need a tank that is good against mass hordes of troops. Then people can give you some suggestions and you can figure out which one is the coolest and which one fits what you need from there. But if you just go up and say, what should I buy for this army? You're not going to get an answer that's going to make you happy unless by sheer luck. So if you are sitting there just going, I don't know if I need this model, ask yourself why you think you need it. And if you don't have an answer for why you think you need it, then maybe you don't need it. Maybe you give it a pass. Maybe you get it later as it just comes later. But, you know, never feel pressure to buy it just because. Because buying it just because ends up with a lot of great plastic on sprues up on your shelf not getting used. Or even if you get past the point where you build it and paint it and put it up on your shelf, it gets shoved to the back because it just never gets used because you weren't honest with yourself about what it is that you were looking for. So be self-reflective, be understanding of who you are, be understanding of what you want, be understanding of what you are drawn to, and be understanding of what it is that you need out of the hobby before you start asking questions as to what model you need. So if you set that groundwork and you do the self-reflection before you start asking, you're going to be in a much better place to find an answer to what it is that you should buy. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I know it's not a simple answer, and there is nobody out there, anyone out there who says that they know what model you should buy is either talking out of their butt or is a little self-deluded because they understand what you need to buy if it was them. They don't understand what you need to buy if it is you. So be self-reflective, be understanding, and I guarantee you, the more that you question and more that you understand about yourself and what you like out of this hobby and what you need out of this hobby, the happier you're going to be with the hobby. No matter what's going on, no matter the FAQs, no matter the additions, no matter the books, you're going to be happier with the game and the hobby if you are more understanding of what it is that you are and what you need and want out of the hobby. So ask those questions, do the hard work, and I guarantee you, you will be happier with your purchases once you do. So let me know down below if this is any help to you, if this is the kind of thing that you like to hear or need to hear, because sometimes we just need to hear these things, and I know they sound simple, but maybe it is that you just needed to hear it, that you just didn't need the new hotness, that you didn't need the unit that just became broken in your codex because you just don't like them, and you don't want to play them. And in that case, that's fine. Do what you need to do to make yourself happy, and you will be much happier with this hobby going forward. And it doesn't matter what anyone else says, do what's making you happy. So let me know down below what you use to figure out what you need. Share, like, and subscribe the video to anyone that you think needs to, and hopefully we'll keep the discussion going and keep the positivity going, because we all should be happy in this hobby. That's what it's for. So, I have been Phil, the Glacial Geek, as always, and until next time, stay safe and have fun.